Coming up next on the SPNN Forum, we have Freddie Bell, General Manager of KMOJ and Chairman of the Board of Ampers. Hi, I'm Martin Ludden, Executive Director of the St. Paul Neighborhood Network, and we are here live in the Kwame McDonald studio at SPNN with Mr. Freddie Bell, the General Manager of KMOJ radio station and Chairman of the Board of Ampers. And Freddie, welcome to SPNN.
It's my pleasure. I've only got a minute, 60 seconds in it. I'm not going to squander it, but it's all yours.
That is pure, that is the radio. That is, nicely done. Welcome to TV, but I know you've done quite a bit of TV and radio.
Actually, my career started in television. I was a broadcast journalist for KETV Omaha right out of college, and that's where my broadcast career started. I was an education reporter. That was my beat. The school district was in an old castle, and that's where we would start. So really cramped quarters because of the small rooms in the castle.
Yeah.
But I learned a lot about last-minute preparation and getting into the meat of a story just by that education beat. So that's where it started in Omaha.
And that was just a couple years ago.
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
Back in the early 70s. So I've been at this craft for a long time, and I feel fortunate to have been able to help a few people in our business and to share some information that I hope people have found useful over the years.
Well, and that, we have to, we don't generally go too deep on current events because we like to air these for a while, but I believe just a couple days ago that that career was recognized, and you had quite an honor. Do you want to share about that?
Quite surprising. So several months ago, I was told that I was being inducted into the Minnesota Broadcasting Hall of Fame, which I thought was a joke, and I practically hung up on Dan Seaman from the Hubbard Broadcasting Company. He and I used to work together for a while. But it was in fact true, and that it requires that you have at least 20 years of Minnesota experience. Yeah. Got that hands down. And so this, just recently, I was honored with the induction with 4 other of my colleagues in the business in the state of Minnesota. It was quite a heady experience, but it also reminds me of how ancient I am and how long I've been in this business. I've never had so many people ask me when I'm planning to retire. So it's a sign of age.
Yeah, I'm trying to decide if you take that as like a compliment or if you're like looking over your shoulder, wondering who's coming next.
The answer is yes. No, it's something that I have not really contemplated too much because I'm so engrossed in the work of our business, and so really taking a look at what will happen next for Freddie, what will I do with my career and all the rest of it is not really top of mind for me. Right. My job is to discern, did I get my signature correct on this contract? Do we have the right personnel in place? Yeah. How is our programming? What is our sound? What is our business acumen? So it's more a concentration on the work of radio than what's going to happen with Freddie once a certain time period happens.
Right. Well, I mean, to me, that would indicate that you're doing the thing that's right for you.
It feels like it. Yeah. This is a career that chased me down. I was looking for a career in radio initially, but television found me first. Yeah. But then I got the opportunity for radio at the same time when it wasn't vogue for a person to be in radio and in television at the same time. Yeah. So I was a bit of an anomaly back in those days. But the first love is radio, and what really forced the issue was when I've moved around the country quite a bit, and I discerned that when I was coming back to Omaha, after leaving Omaha and coming to Minnesota, that having covered stories, being the man on the street in sub-zero weather, that I actually did have a choice. Yeah. And the choice is not many radio broadcasters are out standing in the cold doing a stand-up. Right. I could do it in the studio, and so it became an obvious choice at that point.
Yeah, that's a smart choice. Yeah. So let's talk about radio. Sure. You're at KMOJ. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us a little bit about where KMOJ fits into the Twin Cities radio kind of ecosystem?
Well, I like to say that we're the fabric of the community. It's a community radio station, and I say community from a professional sense. That is the type of license that we have. So our job is a little different than what you might find from a KDWB or any of the other commercial radio stations. Our license is different. So, for example, you won't find political announcements. We're in that type of year when you hear a governor running for office, vote for me. You don't hear those on our radio station because our license does not permit that. But you will hear a lot of community organizations encouraging people to get out to vote, for example.
Right.
But we do not allow candidates to put their spots on the air. That's not the type of radio station that we are. Right. But we do address ourselves to the issues of the day. For example, it's still top of mind for us, but with the violence in our communities, with police treatment, with health care and all the rest of it, those are the issues and many, many more that a community station such as KMOJ addresses itself to. We have the bandwidth, unlike many of the other commercial stations that are more concerned with taking care of their constituent broadcast partners or advertising partners. Right. We're more concerned with taking care of our underwriting partners and putting forward their ideas and their goals.
Yeah. So how do you receive, what those issues of the day are.
Sure.
How do you address those? How do you cover those with your programming?
It's a great question because I would say 70 hours a month, KMOJ addresses itself to community issues. Okay. And we do that with our strong team of citizen journalists, I call them, public affairs hosts. So every day, for example, from 6 until 7 p.m., there is a community host on our radio station. Saturday mornings, there are community hosts on our radio station. Sunday afternoons, there are community hosts on our radio station. And they have their finger on the pulse of what's going on in our communities. So each from their perspective are sharing sometimes life-changing information or life-saving information for people in their core audience based on the aptitude they bring to the airwaves at that particular time. So it could be health focus, it could be financial focus, we might be talking about homelessness, we might be talking about job procurement, any of those things. But 70 hours a month minimum is what we devote ourselves to as a community radio station.
And is that part of your license, that you have to devote 70 hours, or is that something that KMOJ has decided?
That is something KMOJ has decided, and it fluctuates. Sometimes it's more than that. Yeah. But I will say that at a minimum, we're devoting 70 hours a month of community broadcasting.
Cool. And how, so what do you fill the other hours with?
That's another great question. We are an urban contemporary station. Okay. So the music you hear are designed for people 25 to 54, and the music tastes have changed a lot over the years from 1976 when the station first came on the air. But I like to talk about it as a way, the music is a hook to get people to stick around a little bit longer so that when the community and public affairs programs do come on, they are already there. And a lot of these people have carved out a niche for themselves, our broadcasters who are the community host, the citizen journalist. They are huge in our communities. The Sam Simmons of the world, the Shanda Smith Baker, Leslie Redmond, former NAACP president. Keith Ellison, the Attorney General, got his start at KMOJ. Wow. So there are a number of people who have come through the studios at our radio station who have come, left their mark, and are continuing to make their mark in our society. Yeah.
So how do you find those folks, or did they find you?
Again, the answer is yes. They find us and we go looking, and I'll just use the latest person, Shanda Smith Baker. I'm a fan of her podcast, and I went looking for her, and I suggested to her that perhaps you could find a home at KMOJ with the topics that you select for your podcast audience. Perhaps we can expand that for you. And she is an instant I won't say hit, but people really gravitate to her,
Yeah.
and they enjoy the information that she shares.
Right on. That's a good pick then. And so you're also not just the general manager, you also host a show, right?
Yes,
Is
so
it just the general manager? Like, that's a small job. I mean, it's
really anybody could do this job, but the morning show is something that I was doing when I first came to KMOJ the second time. In 2014, I was asked to come on and be a part of their morning show, and so I started at that point, and then when I became the general manager a couple of years later, I decided to stay close to the business because we are so small that it gave me the opportunity to know when I don't know, a microphone breaks down, or if our automation system is not working properly, or we've done something particularly well that should go across the whole landscape of the radio station. It gives me that perch, that vantage point, to understand what our broadcasters are going through, what they're experiencing, the highs, the lows, the in-betweens, and to really be present in the moment with them. And that's really helpful in that regard.
And also just what a great, I think, a great leadership move on your part to be, in the studio doing that work so that you can know what's going on.
It's helpful, and it really fosters relationships. Years ago, there was a management course that talked about management by walking around.
Yeah.
This is indeed walking around, not only the studios, but walking around the community. And I hope it's a guidance or a template for other individuals, because it takes commitment. My day starts at 2 o'clock in the morning, and I'm at the studios by 3:30, preparing for a show that starts at 6 a.m. And I know that a lot has been made about that, but we're looking at young broadcasters coming into the business, trying to understand, how do you do this thing called radio? What goes into it? Do I just come in and sit down and start talking about anything? The answer is no, but there is a certain amount of preparation, such as we did here. Something called program prep. It's important to know what you're going to talk about. And I'm demonstrating that to our new broadcasters and those who are quite a bit older than me and those who are quite a bit younger than me. It's all the same, but preparation is the key, I believe, in having a program that connects with the communities to which you're trying to reach.
If you are just joining us, we're here with Freddie Bell, the general manager of KMOJ, and we're talking about radio and community. And I think, we could do a word count, but community is clearly so central to what you do.
It is.
And I want to come back a little bit to, your license as a community radio station.
Okay.
Who else, who are your kind of peers in that community radio space, and how does that, how do you see that? I think you've talked about what you see your responsibility as, but where do you fit in with the rest of the community radio kind of scene in the Twin Cities?
Well, in the Twin Cities, and I hope I don't leave any of the stations
That's all
out,
right.
There's a consortium, and I use that word loosely. There is a group of us, that's probably better. KBEM, the high school station at North High School, the KFAI, KRSM. These are stations that are a part of our group, and there are a couple of others here in the Twin Cities, and there are also 16, 17 others across the state of Minnesota, each with their own texture, each with their own style of programming, some larger than us, others, quite a few others smaller than KMOJ. Our staff is only 6 paid employees, but we have a volunteer group of like maybe 100 or more who help us from time to time. So the texture, each radio station is different. I mentioned to you earlier that our format is urban contemporary station. So you could hear, I don't know, Beyonce, and you can hear Michael Jackson. At the other stations, you might hear more of a country bend to it, or even more contemporary than we are at the different stations. But it's whatever that station has decided to do in order to reach the communities that they serve.
And then Ampers is that's a group of community radio stations, yes?
It is. It's an association of radio stations and diverse community radio stations. So in Duluth, there may be a radio station that focuses on the concerns of the Native community in that area, White Earth community. There are stations that are all across the state of Minnesota, each uniquely different, but the common bond is that they're all serving their communities in the best way that really fits what they're trying to do. As an example, we may talk about community policing and the new city community safety commissioner. However, that may not be important to a person who is in Two Harbors or in Mankato. That may not be of interest, and that's okay. Right. But their programming brings that forward, and it really serves the needs of their community. Yeah. As such, there are programs that we all generate. It may be a public affairs program that talks about homelessness at KMOJ. That might fit a station in Duluth.
Absolutely.
It may fit stations in Mankato. Yeah. But there may be stations that talk about the Country Joe cookout or something like that our audience may not be interested in. They may not. But it's really diverse, and that really is what makes it really interesting, and why there is a close kinship with all of the stations across the state of which who are part of the Ampers organization.
Mm-hmm. And so Ampers is a way for you all to generate content together. Are there other, I mean, not generate together, but generate content that you can share statewide?
Sure, sure.
And then are there other advantages to how that group operates? Like what other things does Ampers do?
Well, Ampers is, for me, as a general manager, is a sounding board. The organization is also meant to help support the radio stations. So that could be from a management standpoint. It could be representing us in court if something like that should take place. Because we're all getting state grants, that is a clearinghouse for us. So when we're looking to ask the state of Minnesota for funding for X project, you name it, we don't have to employ a lobbyist at KMOJ because Ampers has a lobbyist that represents the organization, and as such, it represents all of the stations in our group. So there's one paid lobbyist who takes care of everything, and that's really a lot easier. And just recently, we brought on a communications law firm to help us with litigation as it pertains to broadcast journalism. And that's really helpful, and it would have been cost prohibitive for us and even the stations that are quite a bit smaller than us, but Ampers makes that possible.
Yeah. And I mean, it allows you to do the
radio
work that you're here to do. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. We talked about this 30-year career spanning TV and radio. I'm curious how you did you come to it?
Well, I went to school at Creighton University in Omaha. I was going to be in the medical profession. Creighton is not a big school, but is really known for their dentistry and healthcare. Yeah. I was lost on campus as a freshman. I was walking in and out of buildings trying to find where I needed to be in a prescribed amount of time.
Yes.
I was having difficulty.
I went to the U.
I
understand that.
And I know a lot of freshmen there, former freshmen who are listening today. As I went into one building, there was an individual who was standing down at the bottom of the staircase, and I asked for directions to my next class. He gave them to me, and I looked past him, and I saw what looked like a broadcast studio. And I asked, do they teach broadcasting in college? And he looked back at me, and it's like, well, yeah, they do. That afternoon, I changed my major.
Wow.
So I went from being a medical technologist or whatever it was at that time to a broadcast major at Creighton University, and my life changed. My mother and I didn't speak for a while. She was not the happiest. She thought I'd be the first doctor in the family. Yeah. But I am a broadcast journalist. That's what I went to school for. And that's how it happened, by accident. And I'm so grateful for having gotten lost on Creighton University's campus. Otherwise, I don't think we'd be talking today.
Right, and that brings us back to here. That's great. I like that you use the term discernment several times while we were talking, and I can see there's another guy locally who talks a lot about, in career tracks, serendipity. And I think you have a serendipitous beginning to your broadcast career, but you can't get that serendipity without some real discernment. I imagine there was more than just I'm going to do this now.
No, well, it seemed obvious to me at that point. I had actually failed the introductory psychology class, and I was wondering, what am I doing?
Yeah.
But it's interesting. So that individual who was at the bottom of the staircase helped me. If you've ever been to our studios in Minneapolis, we're located on the second floor of the 5 Points building. A huge red staircase takes us to our studios. And so now it's me at the bottom of the staircase, helping people who want to come into our business, showing the way to our community leaders and people who are trying to find help just to make it from day to day. So it was, you call it serendipitous, I call it a calling to this business to be able to help. I'm not a minister.
Right.
I will never be a politician.
But it's still a vocation.
It is a vocation. And it's helped, I believe it's helped a lot of people over time.
Yeah. Well, and not a lot of people get to say that. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Where can folks find KMOJ on the dial?
89.9 is where you can find, that's the frequency.
Yeah.
And our guys, you'll hear us, we'll say 89.9, that's a marketing term, but it's 89.9. In these days, you're not doing it right unless you have an app. There is an app that can be downloaded from the App Store, Google or Apple, and you type in KMOJ, and not only do you get KMOJ, the People Station, in 2017, I launched a second station called The Ice, Minnesota's coldest music. And it is a hip-hop station, all hip-hop 24 hours a day, just as KMOJ was launched in '76. And the idea was, at that time in 2017, we realized what was in front of us. There are people who started out with us in 1976. Just do the calculation, you can imagine how old they are today. So in order to preserve the legacy of KMOJ, I thought it was a good idea for us to have a younger leaning station playing the music of today, and that's what the Ice does. So the Minnesota's coldest music doesn't say hip-hop, but it does talk about the region in which we live.
Yes, the bold north.
That's indeed.
Yeah.
So we're, since 2017, we've been broadcasting on the HD2 channel, which is an overlay of our FM signal.
Cool. Thanks for that. I did not know that going in, so thank you for that.
You're welcome.
And thanks for sharing your time with us today. You are clearly very busy and very engaged in your work and your community.
Well, I'll tell you that no matter how busy I am, I learned this from Maya Angelou. I had the opportunity to interview her 3 different times. And I'll tell you the way she shared it with me. Nothing else matters other than our conversation today. You have me completely, totally, and I am present with you today to share with your communities and try to convey information that might help someone.
Thank you. And thank you for the conversation. We have been here live today in the Kwame McDonald studio at SPNN with Mr. Freddie Bell, the General Manager of KMOJ. Thanks, and join us again soon.